Hey, balance.
And chaos.
Edging onto the board.
So, we have a game to showcase for you guys that is called Call to Adventure. It's been a pretty fun game, and we wanted to kind of do a how to on this one since there's been some changes.
First of all, the rules aren't terribly clear as presented in the rule book, and some of the rules they present in there outright conflict with some of the cards they have in there. So we're taking the time to try and kind of clear that up.
Yeah, let's start getting into it. First of all, we've got game rules and little play mats for you to use that have some quick guides on the bottom. Some of the quick guides actually conflict with the rules written in the rulebook, and that's one of the things that we're going to try and correct. The quick guide is the accurate of the two. And so we'll at least start setting this up, show you what it looks like when it's set up.
So, here is your basic playmat right here.
These are all the runes that you'll be using throughout the game. Think of them like two-sided dice.
Everybody gets 3, but there are additions as well as that. So the core concept, I suppose you could say, of this game is you are trying to tell a story. And you do so within 3 acts. Each player is dealt 2 cards from the Act 1, or from the origin deck, I should say, which is the beginning of your story. The second, 2 cards from the Path deck, which is the continuation of your story, or Act 2. And then 2 cards from the Destiny, which is the conclusion of your journey. Now, these 2 cards are played face up. I'll just go ahead and turn the top 2 up, just for funsies. You would ordinarily get 2 and get to choose from one of them.
Don't forget shuffling.
Of course, always with the shuffling. Always with the shuffling. So, this declares that your origin is a merchant, and that your path is, your motivation, I suppose you could call the path, is your thirst for knowledge. Now, ordinarily, your destiny would be face down, but you get to look at it, so we'll just go ahead and expose it for you. Your destiny is to become the Master of Whispers. Each of these 3 cards has an effect that you can use at some point in the game. Your destiny does not come into play until the conclusion of the game. However, these 2 will affect the course of the game throughout for you.
Yep. And as Chaotix stated, your destiny remains face down, but you can look at it at any time.
And ideally, you want to be building towards your destiny the whole time. You might have noticed several symbols scattered hither and yon. These ones up here are symbols that represent certain statistics. The wand is intelligence, for example, whereas the purple crown is charisma. So as stated, everybody gets at least 3 of these runes. However, the more of these symbols you have attached to either on the cards or on the various cards that you will place under these, more on that later, you get to add more runes, thereby increasing your chances of succeeding at whatever challenge you take them on.
Yep. And the runes are basically, for any of the Dungeons and Dragons fans out there, your 6 basic stats. Sword represents strength. I'm guessing it's kind of like a house representing constitution.
They always have it on the facing down, so I'm guessing it's a shield.
A shield there, that works.
Yep.
You've got the arrow for dexterity, the magic wand for intelligence, the head covering for wisdom, and the purple crown for charisma. Now, you can have up to 3 of any given rune for a challenge, depending on your build, which we'll get into later, and any cards that you can use. The third runes are always indicated by these 3 dots. So if you are able to get 2 strength, you start off with these 2, and then the third one allows you to grab this, which has a different icon on the back. And we'll get into that later too.
In addition, you may have noticed over here, there are dark runes. You can pick these up whenever you want by spending a renewable point called experience, which is what this little diamond down here is.
Represented by these red tokens.
You can buy extra into these, but there is a cost for. They also have a different symbol on the back. If you get that, you will achieve great success, but you will also lose part of your alignment.
Yep, so for every time you get one of these moon symbols, you go down.
Overall, this doesn't terribly affect the outcome of the game. However, there are these little symbols right here, which are representative of these sets of cards. Hero and anti-hero, respectively. Depending on where you're at on the alignment chart, you can play both, or one, or the other.
As shown, this, represented by both cards, showing the up arrow and the down arrow, means that you can play both hero and anti-hero. You are neutral. If you raise higher on the virtue track, you may only play hero cards, and if you are lower, going towards villainy, then you may only play anti-hero. One thing to note is once you reach the bottom of the track, you may no longer use dark runes.
You gain no further benefit from your forays into darkness, as it were.
Yep. So let's get these shuffled, and then we'll show you what kind of a setup is and how to start. Alright, so the very first thing you do when you're starting the game is each player is dealt 2 of each of the cards: Origin, Motivation, and Destiny. You have the option to look at them and choose which one you want to keep. So for this example, my 2 options are Hunter and Apprentice. It doesn't actually make too much of a difference for the gameplay on which one you choose. This is all about preference. These 2 start fairly similarly. With a Hunter, you automatically start with the ability to use a Dexterity rune and a Wisdom rune, whereas the Apprentice allows you to use a Dexterity rune and an Intelligence rune when you're attempting challenges later in the game. They also have abilities down here. For the Hunter, during a challenge, if at least one of your runes shows a result of Dexterity or Wisdom, you gain an experience point. For the Apprentice, once per turn, when you attempt a Intelligence or Dexterity challenge, you may pay an experience point to draw a hero card.
And to show you just how truly little of a difference these make, it's more about the story you want to tell. The same 2 on my end were Student and Squire, which were almost identical. Student gives you an Intelligence and a Wisdom, and lets you gain an experience if any of your challenge results shows an Intelligence or a Wisdom rune. And Squire is the same thing for Strength and Dexterity.
And just to clarify, when we talk about a challenge result, we mean as you cast a rune, we'll use the Hunter in this example since it is Wisdom. During a challenge, if at least one of your rune stones shows Wisdom, then you get an experience. So this would have to land face up. This is the backside being worth 1 point. This Wisdom side is worth 2 points when attempting a challenge.
Which, to give a further emphasis as to why the statistic runes are so powerful, your basic runes have either the one side or the blank side, except for one of them, which lets you draw either a hero or an anti-hero card.
As shown by the arrows.
But in any event, this is still worth nothing, except the card.
Right.
None of these have a blank side except for some of the third tier ones.
Well,
And they're not really blank, they just do a special effect rather than give you a point value.
Right. So for every one of these special runes, the backside is worth 0 for every one of them. But they have, like Kayak said, a special effect. Let's see. Yep. So these are the 3 effects that they can have. If this result comes up, you gain 1 experience point. If the up arrow comes up, you gain a hero card. If the down black arrow comes up, you gain an anti-hero card. And these rewards you get immediately as you cast the rune before the challenge resolves.
Which can be very handy if you have an effect, say, that uses experience points to change an effect of a challenge, or so on and so forth. Or the card that you draw lets you reattempt the challenge.
Yep. For example, this card says, if you have chosen a anti-hero or tragic path during your challenge, you may gain +1 to your attempt. So you can play that immediately. If you are 1 short, this would help you win.
Mm-hmm. So, once you have looked over your origin cards, you decide what your origin is going to be. I'm going to go with student.
I shall go with apprentice, since I am still an apprentice YouTube creator. Alright, next, we choose the motivation of our story. For this example, my 2 motivations are Seeker of Truth and Sworn Protector. Seeker of Truth, basically these just give you an ability that will help you progress through the challenges. So once per turn, I may pay 1 experience to gain an additional wisdom rune until in a turn for any challenge I am attempting.
It is worth noting on abilities such as this, you cannot use a given rune for a challenge unless that challenge utilizes that rune.
Right, we'll get more into that a little later.
We'll cover that when it comes up.
And the Sworn Protector pretty much does the exact same thing, it's just for Constitution instead.
And then out of my 2, Thirst for Knowledge does exactly the same thing for Intelligence. But the other one, Born Lucky, lets you once per turn pay an experience point to flip over 1 dark rune that you have just cast. So you needed the 2 points and you don't mind taking a point of infamy on your influence track, fine, flip it or the 1 over to the moon. Or you can't possibly take that infamy hit and you're not going to lose if you lose that 1 point. Don't. But it's going to cost you an experience point and you can only get to do it 1 turn. And only, I should stress again, specifically for the dark runes. It doesn't affect any of the rest of the Smorgasbord.
Right. And as I mentioned, just to verify, anytime you see this strike on any rune, it's worth 1 point. The dark runes, the moon is worth 2, but you lose a point on your infamy check. So for this, I will go ahead and pick Seeker of Truth and put back Sworn Protector.
I will go ahead and take Thirst for Knowledge. Born Lucky can be very useful. I don't typically play with the dark runes unless I'm trying to tell that kind of a story. It gets to be difficult sometimes with all of that infamy building up. Especially since once you hit the bottom of the infamy track, or the dark track, you don't actually get points, you lose them.
Yep. You lose 4 points. And just to clarify, the points on the infamy track are not cumulative. It is wherever you are at the time. So if you are neutral, there's 2 points apiece. And if you go down towards villainy, you'll gain 4 tragedy points. If you go farther, you have 0 points, so it's neither a benefit nor a loss. But going down farther straight into villainy, you lose 4 points off of your story at the end of the game. And again, marked by this little symbol of a red circle over the moon, you cannot use dark runes anymore. You may not even spend experience to gain them.
Yep. It doesn't pay to be too evil. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of the anti-hero cards are amazing, but it should be noted that they are called anti-hero cards. There is a price for being true evil.
Yep. Now let's get into the destiny. And again, just to verify or to clarify, these are going to be face down, so your opponents cannot see them, but you can look at them at any point. So the two options I have here are Hero of Destiny and Blood of the Dragon. So the Hero of Destiny, these are basically what you want to kind of work towards to help you win the game. So the reason you keep them face down is to stop your opponents from being able to guess what you're going for and try and steal your challenges out from under you. So with Hero of Destiny, as long as you gain one rune in your story, as shown by this Dexterity and Intelligence runes here at the top, as long as you have one of every type of rune, you gain 9 additional points towards your victory at the end.
And that's over the top of whatever else you may have stacked up.
And now, one of these is pretty important rules clarification because this was a lot of confusion when we first were trying to play the game. Blood of the Dragon. At the end of game, gain 1 tragedy point for each Constitution or Charisma. Now this is important because it says or. You choose one or the other, you do not get both. And you also gain 1 tragedy for each anti-hero card in your hand. So anything that has not been played yet from this deck.
It cannot be on the field because once you have played a hero card or an anti-hero card, it goes face up next to your storyboard and counts towards your total at the end of the game.
Because every card also gives you a point when played.
Mm-hmm. And some destinies will count how many you have actually played. This one in particular rather counts the ones unplayed.
Right. So for this, I'll go ahead and choose Blood of the Dragon. And then put back Hero of Destiny.
And then for my 2 destinies, I have Paragon of Light, which in and of itself comes with a light symbol. Now these symbols are interesting. They appear throughout challenges and various other cards that you will acquire throughout the game. One of them does nothing. 2 or more will get you a point accumulation at the end of the game. It stops at 4, so you don't ever have to go more than that, unless there's something about your destiny that compels you to. But this is an automatic freebie right there, just from my destiny, which is something to consider. And its effect is at the end of the game, get 3 points if you are either of the 2 top virtuous tracks, and +1 for each virtuous point, which is what these little silver diamonds stand for in your story.
Right. And so just to clarify, in your story means cards that are on the board here, or allies, which we'll get into a little bit later. It does not count the points you get from the virtue track.
Yes, actually, it's something that they did clarify. It's not the number inside the little diamond, it's how many of the little diamond symbols you have.
Right. And just like he had mentioned, this is called a story icon. This one is a divine story icon. This is arcane story icon. And for every 2 of the same set, you gain 2 points. For every 3 symbols of the same set, you gain 4 points. And for every 4 symbols of the same set, you gain 8 points.
And then the other option for my destiny in this particular setup is Mighty Conqueror, which does not have a storyboard icon. However, it has a slightly more powerful version of the and/or option we were talking about. It gives you 2 points each for each strength icon you have in your story, and +1 for either each of your Constitution or Dexterity. I myself think I will go with Mighty Conqueror, because I have done Paragon of Light before.
Alright, now to set up your acts. So Act 1.
I'm going to let Balance handle this solo for just a second. I need to get a drink of water.
Act 2. And Act 3. If you are doing 2 players, then you you put out 3 cards from each act. Now in the beginning, you only interact with Act 1, and we'll get a little bit more into that as we go.
Also, the number of cards dealt out is dependent on the amount of players. It's up to 4 for this game, correct?
Right, so that's what I said. For 2 players, you get 3 cards. Then if you have 3 or 4 players, 4 being the max for this game, you have 4 cards out. So, the person who starts, in the rules, is the last person who has finished a novel. Now, you can choose your own home rules on that if you want to roll dice or rock, paper, scissors, or whatnot.
Generally, it's any set of rules that the group can agree to. It doesn't always have to be the book one, although I personally find it kind of an enjoyable rule. I encourage literacy.
Yes, it is fun to read. But for now, I'll just go ahead and flip these over, and then we'll get going with the rest of the start. So every character starts with your origin, motivation, destiny, your tracker.
You start on the higher of the 2 neutral tracks.
The one that does not have a moon or a virtue sun symbol on it.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody starts with 3 experience points. And everybody starts with a hero card. You're welcome to look at the card whenever you'd like, but you only put it face up when you are going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Now, cards can be used at any point unless in the card itself it has a specific period when it wants you to play.
And it will tell you that. Such as before a challenge, as you attempt a challenge, during it, or after a challenge, so on and so forth.
Now,
On another player's turn, I think, is one of them.
Now, currently, in these decks, there are 3 types of cards. There's challenges, there are traits, and there are allies. So, one of the rules that has never really been clarified is when you're very first starting, where do you put an ally? Because an ally needs to be attached to a challenge. So the 2 variations I have seen is you just start flipping over from what's closest to the deck. So we have an ally right here.
However, there is no challenge to attach to it.
But we will move over to a challenge just so we can show you a better example of this.
Mm-hmm.
Our apologies. We're going to cut to a quick ruling we missed.
Alright, so at this point we are going to go over a few of the finer details of the rules and cover the...
Before that, we gotta do the ally thing.
Oh, you're right.
We'll just, edit.
Yeah, exactly.
Alright, so quick recap. There's one thing that we missed when going over the ally cards, and that is if you are flipping over cards and there are no challenges and the ally has nowhere to go, the allies are immediately discarded and replaced with another card. Ironically, a challenge in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, so one of the rules is if an ally is revealed, then as you're flipping cards over, it automatically gets attached to the first challenge that's flipped after the ally is revealed, or to the challenge that's closest to it. If it's the allies at the end, then you do the challenge that's closest.
Mm-hmm.
Another rule I have seen is whoever's turn it is gets to choose which challenge they would like the ally placed on.
Mm-hmm.
So for this example, we have been playing as flip order. So the ally automatically goes in, and this just makes it a little bit more fair at the very start of the game.
Yes.
So here we have all 3 types of cards. We have an ally, we have challenges, and we have a trait card.
So the challenges come with 2 different flavors on them. You have the name of the challenge over here, the Raging Inferno, as well as the difficulty of the challenge and any statistic runes that may be cast in support of this challenge. Then you have the 2 different paths you can take. The top path is usually the easiest one, Survive the Flames, and it has its own set of rewards. However, the bottom one of this one, Heal the Wounded, adds an extra point of difficulty to the challenge. However, it rewards you with a different rune and a virtue point. However, again, to take this bottom path, you would start with the 3 up here and add the number down here, which in this case is +1. It can go as high as +3, I think, on some cards.
And one of the biggest points of confusion that people have with these challenges is what runes do you use? So if you were to have both Constitution and a Wisdom rune, which one would you roll? Well, the answer is actually on the side, not the path. You get to roll any runes that are on the side of this card, in addition to the 3 starting runes Chaos is showing here.
So you have your 3 runes, and say I were to choose this path, or this challenge. I do not have a Constitution. However, I do have a Wisdom, which would let me throw one of these bad boys on there, making it a little bit easier to reach that 3, especially if I don't get any blanks.
And a lot of hero cards will give you the ability to add runes to your attempts.
Even if you don't necessarily possess that rune, that card gives you that strength.
Now, allies. An ally adds a difficulty modifier to the challenge at large. So this 4 becomes a 5 no matter which path you take. This particular challenge does not have any higher difficulty for the bottom path, but it's still 5 total for this. However, if you manage to complete this challenge regardless of which path you take, you gain the ally as well. And once you have the ally, you just place it next to your character story, and this also gives you a story icon and an ability. You may spend an experience point or sacrifice this ally to gain an additional wisdom rune until end of turn.
Now, some cards, particularly some of the destinies, will count towards allies sacrificed. With that one exception, an ally sacrificed no longer adds to your total score at the end of the game. They're just gone. You lost them along the way. Say sorry.
Yep. So, we'll go ahead and play a quick round. I'll let Chaotix take the first turn here.
Alrighty.
So that we can show you how you add cards from the axe to your story.
Indeed. Well, because of my destiny, I want as much strength as I can possibly get, and I want to start raking in either Constitution or Dexterity. So I'm going to take the easy path of the Raging Inferno and attempt to survive the flames. I do not have a Constitution, unfortunately, nor do I have anything that will give me any benefits there. However, I do have the 1 Wisdom. So I roll all 4 of my runes, and I get 3.
1, 2, 3,
And a
0.
blank. So I did not get a wisdom symbol, so I don't get my experience point. However, I do clear the challenge because I met the number. And because I chose the top path, I get the top path's rewards, and I attach it to the top half of my origin. All of your Act 1 cards are going to go under your origin. All of your Act 2 cards, in theory, are going to go under your motivation, more on that later, and all of your Act 3 cards, again in theory, are going to go under your destiny.
So right now, when you see his board, he has 3 runes that he's able to use when attempting a challenge. He's got, again, 1 intelligence, 1 wisdom, and 1 charisma.
So on any given challenge, I get to add one of these as long as it is supported by the rest of or by whatever the challenge is. So if I wanted to go back and do this, assuming he doesn't take it, I can now add both of these because I now possess them.
Alright, so now his turn is over.
We reveal the new card.
It is another trait. You may only gain this trait if you have an intelligence rune or you spend an experience point. It's actually a pretty good one to have too.
Yes, it is. It gives you a storyline beat and another intelligence rune.
So the big differences between the traits and the challenges is a trait you can gain as long as you meet the requirements, whereas a challenge you have to actively cast your runes in order to beat it, and you have to meet the number or exceed the number. So I know there was some confusion there when we first started playing, is if this challenge is 5, do we have to roll 6 or above, or can we roll 5 or above? And the answer is you have to roll 5 or above, meet or beat the challenge.
Yeah, if it was to beat the challenge, I would have not survived the flames, and I would have had to have discarded this challenge because I attempted it and failed it. And it would have gone over here, I wouldn't have gotten any benefit from it, and a new card would have been revealed anyway.
So, along the lines of revealing new cards, say nothing in this board helps, right? Orphan is kind of a nice trait to have because it gives you an anti-hero card and just gives you 2 points, tragedy points, for your story at the end, but you also go down on your virtue track and you gain 2 experience for gaining it. So if you are going more towards the anti-hero path, then that might be a good one for you to gain.
Also, as a counterpoint, if it's your first act of darkness, it's not terrible. It's fairly easy to come back from that first point.
Right. So one of the things you can do is, if nothing on the board helps, you may spend 1 experience point to go on a journey. And you can do this once per turn. So experience point goes away. You discard any one of the cards you see here.
If you were to discard a challenge with an ally attached to it, the ally is discarded as well.
Yep. And you flip over another card to see if this will help you. So, for me, the best card I can have is the Dangerous Artifact. And I would want to go the bottom path for Constitution, since my Destiny gains me more for the more Constitution I have.
And this is another reason why your destinies are normally face down. We are theoretically in competition right now for Constitution.
You can kind of guess that when you play games, but for the most part.
Right. It keeps it a little easier. Like, the Hero of Destiny card that we demonstrated earlier, I had that in a previous game, and because we were both fighting for a Constitution, I didn't fill it.
So, right now, I have a Wisdom in my character, so I can use that.
You mean an Intelligence?
Thank you, Intelligence. However, I need 5 points. So in order to beat this, I would have to have everything face up at max value. So that's going to be a little bit too risky for me to want to move forward. So I can use my hero card. I can give another hero a virtue on their virtue check, and add any of their runes to my next roll. So for this attempt, I would want to add all of Chaotix's intelligence runes. So I would gain another intelligence, as we see there. Now, if I was able to gain another intelligence point, I would finally have access to the special, but I do not have that at this time. However, just for a little bit of an extra safety net, I can spend 1 experience point to gain a dark rune. So we will try to meet 5 with these runes here. Alright, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the option of drawing a hero or anti-hero card. This happens immediately before the resolution. So for this, I will go ahead and choose an anti-hero card, since that is what my destiny is showing. And I have beat the challenge, going for, I suppose I should have also mentioned at the beginning, you have to choose what path you want to go before you roll.
But you did mention that you were going for the
Constitution.
Yeah, for the Constitution effect. So
correct. So I'm going for Resist Temptation. So then this goes under my character's origin, and I can now add Constitution rune as well to any of my rolls, and the ally stays on the side, giving me another arcane story icon. So now I have 2. At the end of the game, I will gain 2 points.
Mm-hmm. Assuming nothing comes along to force him to sacrifice that ally, because whether or not he uses that effect on the ally, there are some cards that we will come across here later that will just cost you an ally.
Yep.
All right.
So now we have flipped over 3 other types of runes. There is the Justice rune, the Villainy rune, and the Royalty. I should say rune, but they're story icons, I apologize.
Yeah. But yes, so again, they just, as you keep stacking them up, they keep adding more towards your story and towards your overall score at the end of it. There are also certain other cards that will give you effects based on possession of certain of these story icons, as well as when you acquire them. I am going to challenge my childhood rival, and I am going to crush him, taking the bottom path. Before I attempt my challenge, I am going to play Dazzling Wit, which gives me an extra charisma rune, which I do not possess normally. And I do not possess any strength runes as of yet, so I cannot use that, unfortunately. Now this is still a pretty hefty bill to pay, so I am going to be very risque, and I'm going to use 2 dark runes. And hope I roll high. And I'm very glad I did, because otherwise I would not have made that.
Which card would you like, hero or anti-hero?
I will take a hero card, because I cannot play anti-hero cards at this point. Thanks to him giving me a piece of virtue, I get 4 points at the end of the game, but I am no longer able to play anti-hero cards until
Blame yourself for not rolling the moon.
That's kind of why I went ahead and lived dangerously. And then, again, my spent card goes over here to the side of my board and will add to my total score at the end. And again, because I did the bottom path, it goes underneath. Thus is your story started to flesh out. And that will be the end of the turn. Wait, actually, let me see what my card was. Okay.
Alright, so next turn. So now I still have 3 options. However, now that we've gone further into the story, we see I have 2 arcane story icons, and this studious would give me a 3rd. So I will go ahead and say I have an intelligence on my story and just take this. And the trait goes under your origin, just like so.
As long as you meet the prerequisites, it's essentially a free card. And most of them you can pay an experience point for. Anyway. So that flips over as it comes back to my turn. So, I have 2 options here which would give me dexterity. And I could start building up my dexterity, but because of my Mighty Conqueror, I would have to pick Constitution or Dexterity.
And you never know how it's going to go later on in the game.
These might be the only 2 dexterities I see for the rest of the game, and I have already decided to start beefing up my Constitution. So out of those options, I'm going to go with the armed robbery, choosing the bottom path.
So you have 1 Constitution?
One Constitution, yes. And I will play Inner Strength, which gives me a 2nd Constitution.
Alright, so now I have this option. Play as another hero is attempting a challenge. I may choose 1 rune of a type I possess and remove it from their pool. I have a Constitution, so I can remove Constitution runes from his pool.
Which breaks me back down to my 3 base runes. And because I'm going the bottom path, that means there is literally no way for me to succeed on this now, because I do not have any Constitution, nothing to give me Constitution, and he has denied me, or not Constitution, excuse me, Charisma. I have no Charisma whatsoever, and he has denied me my Constitution. So I'm stuck with these 3. If I want to proceed with this, I will have to buy another Dark Rune, and hope I get the moon. And pow. And I got a 2.
So now we look at what happens when you fail a challenge. The challenge gets discarded.
I get no card. I would have gotten the villainous point if I had pulled up the moon, but I also would not have succeeded if I had pulled up the moon. I got too many blanks.
So for this, real quick, we'll put the runes back out.
Oh, yeah.
In the event that Chaotix was able to gain this card instead, he could say hero, and there are some hero cards which will allow you to win these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, this one would be a little difficult for Chaotix in this situation, but we'll just go ahead and do this as a playtest. If he were to draw this hero card, he could play it immediately.
Yep. Which would entitle me to give him my 1 experience point if I'd had it, and I gain another virtue point and a +2 to my next attempt this turn.
Which would give him
The 4 I needed.
1, 2, 3, 4 to be able to play this. So when these symbols show up for drawing a card, you draw immediately before the resolution, and if that card would help you, you can use it immediately, or you can hold on to it for a later turn.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. That's not what happened. So, but it was a good chance to show the example.
For my destiny, I want Constitution or Charisma. I have 1 experience point, so I can choose to go on a journey, which I think I shall, to see if I can get something that will help my destiny in the long run. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this, since this does the least for me. Alas, dexterity and strength. So, I want to choose either intelligence with a royalty rune, or I can try and get my 4th arcane story icon right now. So I will go ahead and attempt that. I will do Uncover Hidden Lore, the top path. Now, I have intelligence runes, and since I have 2 intelligence runes on my character, I can get those from the beginning. And I do have dexterity, actually, I take that back. I also have dexterity for my apprentice. So, I get to add these 3 runes to my attempt.
Which becomes a rather hefty advantage very rapidly, especially in Act 1.
Yes. So I've got 4, 6. I meet this, so I will take this and put it top, as I said, Uncover Hidden Lore.
Do you have any special effects from uncovering an actual wand icon from your cards?
Unfortunately, no. My effect is, when attempting a challenge of intelligence or dexterity, I may pay an experience point to gain a hero card.
That one. Yep. Okay.
So now it is Chaotix's turn.
Alright. Well, now see, this is actually quite beneficial to me. Here is a trait that gives me more strength, and I want all the strength for my destiny because it's 2 points for each. So even after it becomes useless to me, I want to keep acquiring it. And the requirements for Brave, I should have demonstrated that real quick, are to either pay an experience point or just possess a strength rune, which I do.
Alright, so now we go into Act 2.
Yes.
The moment you have 3 cards under your origin, you are no longer allowed to use cards from Act 1.
Mm-hmm.
So, the beginning of my turn, since I am the first player to have 3 cards under my origin, I flip over the Act 2 cards. So starting from closest to the deck, we have a trait, a challenge, and another challenge. So as you can see, this is an ally, so we'll just throw it there. However, since Chaotix is also done right now, there is no longer any current point in having the Act 1 available, so we'll remove it from the board for this example.
As of current standing of the game, there is exactly 1 card in the game that cares about previous acts, although there are plans to develop more so here down the line. However, none of the cards that the princess would care about are in Act 1. So once you have moved on to Act 2, you can just set that deck aside.
Okay, so we see royalty strength, we see strength and charisma, and constitution and strength. Well, as I need more constitution, this would be the most beneficial for me.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, I don't have a lot to be able to do with strength. Or charisma. I have 1 charisma rune. But I will attempt this one anyway. Since I'm out of experience, I can no longer go on a journey.
Oh, my bad.
So I'll add my constitution rune to this. Is the 1 going for the top path. I need to do 5, so I need to roll this exactly in order to gain this card.
And doesn't
No.
quite make it.
But I will-
Unless the card says he does.
Right, I'll go ahead and draw an anti-hero card. This would allow me to play it immediately, but just not enough to be able to beat this. So I'm going to save this card for later. And then this card gets discarded, and Chaotic starts his turn.
Alright.
We have another trait.
And unfortunately, it's not one that either one of us is going to be able to acquire anytime soon. You have to have at least 2 points down on the darkness track before you can acquire this card.
The Virtue track.
Or virtue track, sorry. Yeah, you have to be 2 moons down. That's the only way to get it. You can't spend experience. Nothing.
Which is a shame because, again, the Constitution would help me, but I cannot get into that.
Right. Likewise, I cannot acquire honorable. I do not have a royalty trait anywhere in my story so far.
Start again.
Royalty icon, sorry, yes.
And we don't have
And
experience
I
points.
don't have any experience points either, so I can't buy it. So I am going to confront the corrupt official and resist arrest. I have 1 constitution and 2 strength. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Nice. Very nice.
That gives me my 3rd and theoretically final for I cannot get any more power out of getting strength runes. But as we know from my destiny, it's never going to be enough strength.
And so now here we have adversaries.
Mm.
So they look like challenges, and they play just like a challenge. However, there's only the one path. There is defeating the adversary.
Mm-hmm. And they typically have a much higher challenge rating.
Right? So for this, all adversaries have either a penalty to attempting them or something that'll help you out. When attempting this challenge, you may discard any hero cards in your hand and gain +1 to the attempt for each card discarded. And this has strength and wisdom, neither of which I have.
And it has a challenge rating of 6, which is actually, believe it or not, on the lower end for adversaries.
Right. So for this, we just wanted to give you a brief overview of what it looks like going through the steps of the game. We will do a full game after we're done with the rules, but for now, we will go ahead and get into some of the erratas on the rule changes.
Okay, so at this point what we would like to do is go over some of the finer details of the card rulings. In particular because there are quite a few cards that seem to contradict with the rules as they exist in the book.
And not just contradictions, but there's things that aren't particularly clear in some of the situations that will come up in the game.
So we went looking for clarifications for these things ourselves, and as it turns out, there isn't really an official website for it. However, we did find a forum thread that was answered by the developers of the game to give clarifications on these things. We thought we'd go ahead and go over some of that with you guys. Save you the trouble of searching. So, first and foremost, can you go back to previous acts? No. Once you have fulfilled an act, which is to say you have all 3 cards under your first or second cards over here, that's it. You're moving on. Time has passed. If you are not complete on any given particular area, you can still take cards.
So, for example, take those 3 cards and put them under your first character.
Yes.
Right, so I'll have 1. So, in this example, Chaos is complete with Act 1, and so on his turn he would choose out of Act 2. So for his turn, say he fails a challenge, and it is now my turn. I can make the choice, since I only have 1 card in my character's origin story, I can make the choice to do either Act 2 or Act 1. However, the moment I succeed on a card from Act 2, I can no longer go back to Act 1 at all. Even though I still have a slot open in my origin story, I've moved on to Act 2, you cannot go back.
Yep. Once you have progressed to the next act, there is no going backwards. Now this one in particular was one that we needed, or that we had a lot of questions on, and this is probably the one we're going to go into the most detail on, and that is the sequence of events for attempting and resolving a challenge, because there are cards that can interrupt or alter this process in the game. We've picked out a few to demonstrate for you.
Now, in the forum, you can scroll real quick to the question. In the forum, there is a question that is answered by using the sequence of events, but the question is, what is the exact sequence of events for attempting and resolving a challenge, including when you resolve the effects of runes, such as draw a card, gain experience, gain a corruption, etc., and when hero anti-hero cards can be played? So we'll do the sequence of events, but I want to reiterate, one of the important things to know is if a card makes you redo a challenge, the only benefits you get are from the runes themselves. Namely, these special runes. Because on the back side, you'll see it has draw a hero card. So you would be able to resolve that immediately. However, if you have a dark rune, and the dark rune lands on the moon, you would not move on the corruption check until after your second attempt resolves.
Mm-hmm.
And that would only be resolving the runes on the second attempt. You would not go down the corruption check from your first attempt.
Exactly. So if it came up without the moon the second time around, you're in the clear.
So for this example, we'll go ahead and have Chaos attempt a challenge.
We'll go ahead and... So, things first, the player whose turn it is, the active player, chooses whatever challenge they wish and which half of the challenge they are going to do. It is that once I have declared, say, I will go with enlist in the king's army, the upper path. Okay, so I have to do this difficulty of 4.
So you have to play beforehand.
Mm-hmm. At this point, I now have the ability to do anything that play before I attempt a challenge, or gain the ability or gain a bonus to attempting my next challenge, which I have this card right here, Comrade in Arms, which gives another hero of my choice, of course, 1 experience point. I gain 1 point on the virtue track, and I get a +2 bonus to my next attempt. So now I really only have to make a 2.
And to be specific, this is on the next attempt, so this needs to be played before you cast your runes.
Exactly. So now, this would also be the point at which I would declare whether or not I was spending experience to gain dark runes. Now, having declared my path, played my card, and chose not to pay any dark runes, it is now any of my opponent's turn to play card abilities that are phrased as play when another hero is attempting the challenge.
Such as Instill Fear. Play this as another hero is attempting a challenge. They must choose another challenge or trait instead. In the event this card shows up, the current challenge is discarded, and another one must be picked.
Yep.
So for this, we'll go ahead and leave this in play. We just wanted to show the timing for using that card.
I now will cast my runes, adding my +2 modifier.
So this would be a success, and I can do play this after another hero has attempted a challenge. They must attempt it again, and the difficulty is raised by 1. So now the difficulty is 5. For example, if Chaotix had gotten this symbol, he would be able to choose if he wants to draw a hero or anti-hero card.
Which would happen immediately before this card got played, as a matter of fact. I
That
would
is
have
correct.
that in hand right now. I will go with hero.
So now he can play the hero. However, he still must re-attempt the challenge.
And it's worth noting, if it had been something that could have buffed into or given me an extra boost or something like that, I could, in theory, use that now. But I did not get such a thing, so.
And one thing to note is, for example, Chaotix is now re-attempting a challenge. If you had a card that allowed you to gain more runes, such as Strength or Constitution, although this one is Intelligence and Charisma, we'll pretend for now, then he would be able to use this before he attempts his next challenge, and he may also spend experience to gain Dark Runes before his second attempt.
Yep, I now have that option again. And being as he has made it that much more difficult, I will go ahead and exercise that opportunity to add 1 Dark Rune. And as you can see, I did not succeed this time, even with the extra effort. And now, that has been the sequence of events for the challenge. I have failed the challenge, so the attempt ends in failure. I must discard the card. And as the active player, I flip over the new card. Had it been an ally, I would then choose which challenge I got to attach it to.
Alright.
And then with that, I'm no longer the active player, and it is now Balance's turn.
And so then we start the turn sequence over again. So, just to clarify, the turn sequence is choose your challenge and declare which path you are attempting, such as top or bottom paths. It must be declared before you cast runes. The active player can play abilities phrased, play this before you attempt a challenge, or gain +X to attempt your next challenge, or gain rune until end of turn. This is also when you choose whether or not to spend experience to gain Dark Runes. Third phase, and this is opponents may play card abilities phrased, play this as another hero is attempting a challenge. Phase 4 is cast the runes, adding any modifiers. Phase 5 is if a core rune shows the hero anti-hero icon, draw a hero or anti-hero card. If a special rune lands on a special side, such as one of these, you may gain the corresponding card or experience token. Number 6 is the active player may play abilities phrased, play this during a challenge. 7 is opponents may play abilities phrased, play this after another hero has attempted a challenge, such as you saw with the Dark Lord's Champion. Number 8 is after any reattempt, the challenge resolves. On success, the challenge is added to the active player's story. On failure, the challenge is discarded. Gain any corruption from Dark Runes on this step.
Only after the challenge fully resolves.
And the last step, step 9, is the active player draws a new card to replace the card that was taken. If it's an ally, the active player places it under a challenge in the same row. If gaining a new card causes the active player to go to the next.
To end an act.
Yeah, let's see. If gaining card causes the active player to end an act, reveal. Nah, yeah. So this was errated again. The next rogue does not get revealed until the beginning of the player's turn, who first reached 3 cards in their origin story, or in whichever act you're on.
As we said, this was all on a forum thread that we had to piece together ourselves, so
we'll make sure the document is updated before we display that on the.
Yeah, and we will make sure to attach it into the description on the video,
or link to it at least. So those are the 9 phases of a turn,
and then it starts all the way back again on someone else's turn.
And one question someone might have is, if an ally is revealed, can you place it under an adversary? And the answer is yes. Adversaries count exactly like a challenge, except they only have 1 path.
Alright, so another piece of confusing phrasing on the cards. There will be cards such as Desperate Rage that tell you to count certain icons in your story. For purposes of counting icons in a person's story, it is only those cards that make up your origin, your motivation, and your destiny, although your destiny will not count until endgame. And any cards that become attached to these 3 cards, as well as any allies you have that are not sacrificed. Nothing else counts. Not your hero cards, not your experience points, not your alignment on the virtue track.
Yep. Only cards of this size.
Mm-hmm. Your main storyboard is what they are concerned with. But you can develop quite a few counts that way. And in specifics for Desperate Rage, it asks you to count the number of tragedy icons in your story. That is only the number of the times that the diamond itself appears, not the number within the diamond.
Such as this. So although that says 2, this would count for 1.
Mm-hmm.
As far as that card is concerned.
If this were a black one, if the 4 would not count, it would still only be 1.
Okay. And just to verify one more time, these are triumph points with the silver diamonds, and these are tragedy points with the black diamonds.
Desperate Rage and several other cards do ask you to count those story beats. It is just these here, even though you will see the virtue and villainy,
Triumph and
tragedy, sorry. The triumph and tragedy points on your hero and anti-hero cards, they will not count for part of your story beat. So this is an interesting question that has come up a couple of times. After all the players have completed an act, should you clear the cards from that act?
the previous act.
From the previous act, yes. Right now, there is only one card that cares about previous acts, and that is the Princess Ally, and it really only applies to Act 2, as there are no adversaries in Act 1. However, they do have plans for future expansions to have more cards that will care more about previous acts.
At the very least, they say that there may be, so there's ideas for it, but nothing has been concrete yet.
Yes. So, as a general rule, clearing out a previous act is not necessarily a bad thing right now, but I would say, don't do it, especially if you're planning on picking up expansions for this game.
Yeah, as a habit.
It'd be a bad habit to get into, especially if they do anything with that idea.
So, what happens in the case of a tie score at the end of the game? Well, the developer answer, which is kind of a fun one, is the game ends in a tie. May the best story win. So, what that means is the game is tied. However, if you want to play kind of a home rule, you may create your story for your character, and whoever has the best story is the actual winner.
Mm-hmm. After all, this is a game about creating a story and telling a tale. It was about it a rather interesting and fun way, but at the end of it, you are telling your story. So I do kind of like that home rule, which was also fairly popular in the forums too.
Right, such as, I am a noble who is trained as a spy. That's a pretty interesting story you can come up with right there.
Mm-hmm. Just gotta have the same kind of, creative lateral thinking that comes with solving a riddle or telling a really funny joke.
Or just even reading the cards straight off from the story.
Mm-hmm. You can actually come with a pretty interesting story like that. I think my first game I wound up doing that.
Yeah, that's kind of what we did on our first game. Instead of having to try and come up with how the noble was trained as a spy, we just read the cards in the story, and it was pretty amusing in its own right.
Mm-hmm. So, next question that I wanted to address. What happens when 2 or more players want to play conflicting hero-anti-hero cards? Last in, first out. Whoever played the last card gets to resolve that card first. Magic players will be familiar with that.
Right.
How many times can you journey, pay an experience point, that is, to get rid of a given card in an act and replace it with a new one? The answer is once per turn, unless you have a card or ability or some other effect that allows you to do it in multiple ways. An example of that would be Lone Wanderer. So, when you go on a journey, can you discard any revealed card on the board, even card from past acts or acts you have not yet reached? The answer is yes. You can use that to sabotage another player if you know that they're going for lots of Constitution for whatever reason, and you don't want them to have any more. You can burn their Constitution challenge, just so they can't have it.
And that's why it's important to keep your Destiny cards face down.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they might have a general idea of something you're going for, but they won't know.
Not for sure.
So this one is kind of an important one. So
Yes.
let me grab these cards quick.
Oh, yes.
Alright, so, for example, Performer. Performer says, during a challenge, if at least one of your runes shows a result of a X or Y, in this case it's Constitution or Charisma, gain an experience point. So, if you have a challenge and you have both runes in your story, you roll those and they both flip up, do you gain 2 experience points or do you gain 1? And the answer is you gain 1. It is X or Y, so you only get 1 experience for them.
Mm-hmm. It's important to know. Another card that is, or another bit of a technical question, can you play a hero or anti-hero card even if you gain no benefit from playing it? Yes, you may. That because at the end of the game you still get to add that to your score. It doesn't have to be able to affect anything, but if you just want to get it out of your hand while you can do that.
For example, Warlock. You can use Intelligence and Wisdom runes to try and beat him, but this is add a Dexterity or Strength rune to your next attempt. You can play this just to have it, so you get the extra triumph point at the end. However, you gain no actual runes for the attempt because they do not match
the challenge you are attempting, or in this case, the adversary. An interesting technical point here, there are 2 traits. One is Rags to Riches, and the other is Tragic Loss. That say you can spend an experience point to gain them if you don't meet the don't otherwise meet the requirements. If they are both out on the field, you are not allowed to pick them both up. You get one or the other. Now, if it comes back around to your turn and it's still on the field, by all means you can pick it up again, but on the same turn, no.
Thanks.
There we go. Right. And in both cases, you either have to have lost a challenge to pick this up, or you have to spend the experience point. only buy one of these, period. However, I'm fair certain that if you buy the one and then lose the challenge, you can pick up the other one. I don't think there's any ruling against that. Might have to look into that. So if you buy this and then lose your challenge, whatever challenge you're attempting.
You can't buy it. You can't buy it.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I misread the card.
Well, no, it's not that. So when you're doing a challenge or a trait, you have to choose if you're doing a challenge or a trait. You can't do both.
Right, no, that was me misunderstanding.
Well, no, I know, but even if it did say you could spend an experience to buy it, you can't buy and then do a challenge. Buying this is the end of
That's true.
the turn.
That's true. That would be the end of the turn. So, another one that we were confused on for a while. During setup, when you reveal the cards for Act 1, if there are any allies amongst the cards, what do you do with them since there is not currently an active player? Whoever the game's first player is gets to place that ally.
Yeah, and then you kind of went over that a little bit when we first started talking about the couple of options that you have
Right.
for kind of home ruling, so to speak.
And that's more or less everything. There are some other rules for solo and co-op play, but we're thinking we're going to cover those in like a separate video.
Either that, or you can just kind of go over those on the document that we have linked in the description.
Don't get me wrong, I do love that this game has a solo mode so that you can still play if you don't have anyone around or if you're unfortunately quarantined, as has been the case for the last couple of years now.
Or if you just want to get some ideas for stories, because it's kind of a fun game that way.
Right? But to me, board games are about playing with friends. All right.
So I think that kind of does it for our rules and errata readings. So the next part of this video, we're kind of planning on just playing out a game so we can go through the motions and let you guys see how everything works.
And so that you can kind of see how long the game will run you in case you're thinking of picking this up.
I never actually realized this, but you stack really well, the experience points.
Oh wow, so they do.
And then I topple them almost immediately.
Great. We're still learning things about this game ourselves.
That's kind of new. God, that makes it easier. So anyway, sorry.
We'll be back shortly.
So this is something I never considered. I can't do anything.
Yeah, I can't either. I mean, I can try, or you could try, but
I mean, this is the only thing I can do to attempt, but I can't actually do anything with that.
yeah, you're not gonna make it.
It's kind of an interesting situation, because none of the cards I have gain me experience in any way.